It appears more tragedy has come out of Palestine, and this time from the West Bank, and specifically with an American citizen being shot dead. And by who? By the IDF, the Israeli Defense Force, wielding responsibility for a sniper shooting a American citizen, a woman, in the head who was quite literally standing around doing nothing, simply at a protest in the West Bank, protesting the actions of the Israeli government. And because of this, she took a bullet to the head. Genuinely tragic, and as we see, it doesn't matter if it's an American citizen, you will simply see hand waving from the American government, acting as if they care so much about these people that are American citizens, but as we know, they don't give a shit. Look only back to the era of Barack Obama's presidency to understand that Barack Obama himself drone struck an American citizen and a 16-year-old child, Anwar al-Awlaki, and did so because of the actions of his father. That's right. That's where we're at. So what you need to realize is it doesn't matter if this was an innocent woman who was shot in the head or a young child who was bombed from the skies. The United States government will keep its mouth shut when it comes to the fact of any retaliation that is required to see people responsible for something like this held accountable. Now let's go ahead and jump in and see what we've got. Going ahead now and starting off with CNN World, here we see American activist shot dead by Israeli forces at West Bank protest, eyewitnesses say. And this is not the first time we've seen something like this happen, considering the fact of what we know about the death of Rachel Corrie being crushed to death by a bulldozer in Israel when she was trying to stop the destruction of Palestinian homes in Gaza. So, what you need to realize is when you see something like CNN presenting you this information, which I know there's got to be someone out there watching this going, wow, you're using CNN as a source? I thought you didn't trust the mainstream media. And you'd be correct. But what you need to realize is when you read as much news as I do, it becomes quite easy to realize whether what you're dealing with is either news or propaganda, whether it's trying to inform you or condition you into a certain mindset. And another good way to go ahead and fast track an understanding of the information that you're dealing with, if it's going to be propaganda or not, or at least framed to be presented as such, would be to go ahead and look who's writing the article. If this was written by someone like Oliver Darcy, I wouldn't be going through it because the spin that was put on it would be completely removing the value of what the raw information can provide. So let's go ahead now and jump in. Here we see a young Turkish-American woman, Aysenur Igi, was shot and killed in the Israeli-occupied West Bank on Friday, according to the U.S. and Palestinian officials, while she was taking part in a protest near Nablus. Igi was shot in the head by Israeli forces responding to the gathering, according to two eyewitnesses who spoke to CNN. The 26-year-old had been participating in a weekly protest against an Israeli settlement near the Palestinian village of Beta, they also said. The Israeli military has admitted to firing at the demonstrators. Let's just go ahead and pause there for a moment. Okay, let's address the nature of the asymmetric power differential that is afoot here between the protesters and the Israeli Defense Force, because here you see in a statement the IDF added that its forces responded with fire towards a main instigator of violent activity. And what was that violent activity? Well, apparently this person was hurling rocks at them, and thus they posed a threat. So that gives them justification to shoot you. You throw rocks at us, and we can shoot bullets at you. Absolutely insane, but when you get down to the minutia of what actually happened here, it's even more unbelievable, because the woman who was shot, this American citizen, she wasn't throwing the rocks. In fact, she was so far away that she had no capacity to even be the person who was activating violence upon these IDF snipers. Interesting that. Here we see the IDF is looking into reports that a foreign national was killed as a result of shots fired in the area, it also said. And what a statement like this rings out to me as is effectively the Israeli Defense Force claiming that they will look into themselves and find out that they did nothing wrong once again. Government doing government shit. Here we see Igi had been volunteering with the International Solidarity Movement, the same pro-Palestinian activist group as Rachel Corrie, a U.S. citizen who was killed in 2003 while trying to block an Israeli bulldozer from razing Palestinian homes in Gaza. This morning brought the awful news that Israeli troops reportedly killed recent UW graduate Aysenur Igi in the West Bank, University of Washington President Anna-Marie Koss said in a statement. Aysenur was a peer mentor in psychology who helped welcome new students to the department and provided a positive influence in their lives. And let's just go ahead and take a look at her one more time, because she has an absolutely beautiful smile, and sadly the world will no longer be able to be treated by it. Finishing it off, we see, as people were running away, live fire was shot. That's right. As people were running away, that's when the bullets came raining down. Eyewitnesses described the moments leading up to her killing on Friday. Iggy was crouched near a dumpster at the bottom of a hill when gunfire began. Vivi Chin, who volunteers for Faza A, another Palestinian group, or pro-Palestinian group, I should say, which works in partnership with ISM. So both of these groups being activist groups that are trying to provide aid and support to people in Palestine, and also protesting the actions of the Israeli government, both in Gaza and the West Bank. We were all at the bottom of the hill and the Israeli army was at the top. Chen had said that there were 2 volunteers sitting behind a dumpster and that they fired one shot at the dumpster. It hit a metal plane, and then there was another shot, and they shot her in the head. We were all standing still, not moving, just standing there, and they shot her through the head. That's right. So this woman, pressing no one within the IDF, presenting no threat, was still doing nothing more than receiving a bullet through her cranium. And why is that? All because she dared stand within that of the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, and attempt to protest the actions of the Israeli government and the barbarism that they are visiting upon the people of Palestine. Isn't this just absolutely insane? Now let's go ahead and throw it into this footage of fellow activists crying over her corpse, and sadly, like I said, the beauty of her smile is something that will no longer be seen by this world, and what we most certainly know is that the person who took the shot, they feel no pain, no sorrow, and nothing in their heart for the fact that they are the one who removed this woman from this life.
And then how many more have to die?
We need to find our friend. You're that one?
Now here you see the response from the family to that travesty that you just witnessed. Family of American killed by Israeli forces in West Bank calls for independent investigation. A family of an American who was killed by Israeli forces in the Israeli-occupied West Bank on Friday is calling for President Biden to order an investigation into the shooting instead of relying on Israel to investigate itself. The White House said that it was deeply disturbed by Iggy's killing, but did not blame the shooting on Israeli forces and said that it asked the Israeli government to investigate the incident. And there you have it, once again, the standards of how governments operate. We investigated ourselves and found out that we did nothing wrong. I made that comment about the Israeli government and the IDF before I even found that article from antiwar.com. It's just obvious because this is how these things always play out. Anyways, nonetheless, the thing that I think is most interesting to focus on here is, why is it that you see things like this starting to happen in the West Bank? Why is it that tensions are rising in this region? And it's because of the fact of who Benjamin Netanyahu is having to court within the upper echelon of his government. He's having to court those that are even more to the right than that of the Likud party, because as we understand, with the center-left, center-right, and the liberals themselves in opposition to Netanyahu and his actions, whether it be with the fact of funding Hamas consistently, reorienting himself around the Israeli constitution to make sure he could be the longest-serving prime minister, there's so many different things that Israeli society was up in arms about against Benjamin Netanyahu, and what we see is, now that he's lost those people, he's going to have to curry favor with those who are even more outside the spectrum of what many would consider to be that of allowable opinion and operational ethos, and because of this, he and his government are going to be extending beyond the standards of what we had seen prior, which is exactly why you see things starting to pop off in Judea and Samaria, otherwise known as the West Bank. Now let's go ahead and jump into something that I thought was quite revealing, if I'm going to be quite honest, because it does explain this in its entirety, not giving the backstory of what's going on with Benjamin Netanyahu and his government specifically, but it does detail you the fact of what's going on with the West Bank. Here we see from Haaretz, on the road to annexation, Israel is turning the West Bank into Gaza. That's right, we're seeing the fact of the evolution of not only what was happening in Gaza extend now to the West Bank, as many within that of Israel have wanted to see for so long. They've wanted to see this ethnic cleansing of Palestine, and I do not mean that the fact of killing all of these people. They would like to see them flee to other lands many of the times, and because of that, see nothing more than the Greater Israel Project be represented and created for only Israelis. As we know, if you are not aware, there are already Arabs that live within the walls of Israel. They do not have full rights, as does everyone else, But the thing that you need to come to an understanding is that even with that, if you're an Arab person living within Israeli society, you still have a far better standard of living than many of the people throughout the Middle Eastern world. So there's a solid argument to make there, but nonetheless, I digress. Moving on back to this article. Here we see Israel has decided to turn the West Bank into the Gaza Strip. The methods of operation are the same, as is the weaponry. The goals are similar too, and the results won't be long in coming. Israel will soon awaken to another Gaza, this time on its eastern border, with all of this that it has implied. Since this outbreak of war, Israel has changed its policy in the West Bank, and the Palestinians living there have faced a new, even harsher reality. The first step was the complete closure and cancellation of all the work permits in Israel. Freedom of movement was reduced to a minimum, so access to workplaces was also restricted inside the West Bank, and the economic situation has deteriorated even further. This is a solid article, link in the description down below. You will be able to go find it if you are curious to understand what is going on in relation to how the West Bank is starting to deteriorate and start to mimic that of Gaza. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you for watching if you got this far. Sadly, we see the fact that an American citizen has been killed and another innocent person murdered by the IDF. Thank you for watching. Thumbs up if you liked it, thumbs down if you didn't. Tell me where I'm wrong in the comment section down below. Stay lovely, stay great, and most importantly, my friends, as always, go tell someone you love them. They may need it, and I promise you it's always worth doing. Peace out.